and will be presented to you by Keisha Craig of MetLife. Please note that all lines will be muted during this webinar. If you'd like to ask a question, you can go to your question pane on the control panel and type it in. We'll answer the questions at the end of the webinar. Also, please note that we are recording this webinar, and it will be sent to you along with the presentation. You'll get audio as well as the presentation in a follow-up email that you should receive by tomorrow. Okay, everyone, thank you again, and I'm going to turn this over to Keisha.
Thanks, Tracy. Again, I'm Keisha Craig. I'm a senior marketing consultant here at MetLife, and today I am sharing with you the findings from some market research that we conducted last year, the latter part of last year, on the words that work when it comes to that language that drives your client discussions regarding disability insurance. If I can get my slide to move here. 1 second. The agenda for this discussion, really we're going to start with kind of why the research, the current landscape, and what we were finding prior to this research. I'm going to talk to you about Maslansky and Partners, who is the market research firm we partnered with to conduct this research. We'll talk through the findings, and then we'll sort of wrap up with what it all means and how to put those words to work in your client conversations. So why the research? Really, this slide is meant to kind of give an overview of the current landscape and some of the battles that sellers are fighting that they may or may not be aware of, the challenges and opportunities that relate to reaching customers. And as I know, most of us on the phone are sellers, but we're also consumers. And putting on your consumer hat, you know that as consumers, we get a lot of messages on a daily basis in our email, through social media, voicemails, work email, your personal email. You may have more than one personal email. We're inundated with messages from all angles. Statistically, about 3,000 messages per day for the average person, and that's not including what they're subjected to through Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and those social media outlets. So all that means, you know, as a seller, you have a narrow window to really grab that consumer's attention. They're used to kind of tuning out noise because they are getting so many messages. So that's one challenge, and then they aren't necessarily connecting the dots. So clients rationalize why they don't need disability insurance. It's kind of they're coming from a place of no, and many don't necessarily associate the risk of not having a plan in place to their personal situation. They think they're covered through work, or kind of have this "it's not going to happen to me" mentality. The sales language traditionally has been pretty focused on the product as opposed to the need. So clients are kind of used to those canned product pitches and are used to turning them out. And that lack of personalized messaging is really hindering a number of sellers. And in terms of helping them to connect the dots, or really building out on the fact that they're not, and sort of rationalize why they don't need it, these statistics give just some overall numbers on the current landscape. So 63% of people agree that most people need disability insurance, but when you look at how many responded with "I need disability insurance," there's roughly a 15% gap there between what I need and what most people need. And then translating that into an actual action plan, I have disability insurance, the numbers fall off even more. It's not seen as a necessary item. The concept is attractive. The concept of protecting their income is attractive, but they don't necessarily connect the dots to an income protection plan as something they need to have in place. So those quotes at the bottom, my clients quickly discount disability, and I don't believe a layperson understands disability, really kind of sum up the current landscape. People know that they should be protected, but they aren't necessarily doing it. And the question then becomes, how do we reframe that sales conversation to be more productive and fruitful for consumer and advisor. How can we help advisors and wholesalers have more productive conversations about disability insurance that provide solutions to more clients? And that's really the question we were trying to answer when we set about conducting this research with Maslansky. So who we are, and this is really from the perspective of who is Maslansky. They're a global communication strategy firm. Their kind of trademark guiding principle there is it's not what you say, it's what they hear. So the message that we as marketers, we as sellers, the message that we send it out isn't necessarily the message that our consumers are hearing. It's not what we're saying, it's what they hear that is really driving the decision on whether that conversation results in a sale or not. Sending the message is easy, but the communication so that they're getting the message that we're sending is actually quite difficult. And Maslansky's focus is on finding the right language so that the two line up. What we're saying lines up with what they're hearing. And their experience, Maslansky has done a number of different research initiatives here at MetLife and across financial institutions and broadly across industries outside of financial services. They're pretty well known. They started they're most well known in the political sector, and I'll get into kind of their methods on the next slide. But they test responses to messages amongst hundreds of consumers, financial advisors, and producers, and they're really focused on helping to drive results. For the purposes of this research, we kind of had two perspectives that we were going after when conducting this research. The consumer perspective drove most of it, but we also rounded out that viewpoint with some industry perspective. So the consumer profile, we looked at individuals who were employed full-time between ages 25 to 50, had children, income of 75 or more. We conducted 2 3-hour response sessions in Charlotte and St. Louis, and roughly 25 to 30 participants per session. And this graph on the lower right there really kind of sums up the research that Maslansky conducted. Each of the consumers had a little dial, which is what you see in the stick figures right hand there. They have a dial, they're watching a screen, hearing an advisor talk about disability insurance in a number of ways. They use that dial to respond either positively or negatively to every word of what he's saying. So as they like what he's saying and he's going in a direction that an individual responds to, they turn it one way, and if they don't like it and it's turning them off, they turn it another way. And through each second minute of the presentation, there's kind of a trend line going across the screen that we can see how across the individuals in the room, how positively or negatively what he's saying was being received. And that diagram really talks about the connection between what you hear, your gut, kind of that gut reaction to what you're hearing, and then how you think and feel about it in your brain is step 3. But all those are kind of connected, and between the 3, they give you an understanding of how, in general, an individual felt about what they heard. And then the second half, as I mentioned, is that industry perspective. We talked to sellers, wholesalers, some advisors, or some partners at the Plus Group actually participated in this research. And we conducted those interviews via the phone and the web, and they were meant to really round out that that 360 view of disability insurance, why it's not being sold, some of the obstacles that sellers are facing kind of across the board, what the current landscape looked like. And I talked a little bit about this already, but in terms of how we conducted those quantitative response sessions with the consumers, we tested language from MetLife and a number of our key competitors. We gathered them and then organized them into these 3 different sales presentations, and then within the sales presentation there were a number of different ways to pitch it. So those 3 sort of buckets are the protect your lifestyle, and that first one focused on the negative consequences of losing one's income. The second, strengthen your financial security, and it had a more positive spin to it, and the impact of being prepared for the unexpected. The third bucket being that build a foundation, and sort of balanced out the other 2 and focused on income as an asset and a base assumption that the client will need income to sustain their financial plan. And like I said, within those 3 buckets, there were a number of different articulations, so a number of different ways to pitch disability insurance that either focused on the positive, the negative, or income as an asset. So what that really means is kind of the reality is clients assumed group coverage was enough. They assumed they already were covered through their employee and didn't worry about anything additional because they thought they were covered. Advisors weren't having a lot of conversations with clients because they worried about harming the client relationship by pitching them something that they ultimately didn't think they needed, or as an advisor, I may not even understand the ins and outs of disability insurance, and I don't want to harm this life insurance sale or annuity sale or the relationship built on some other product by broaching the subject of disability insurance. And those assumptions in those first 2 bullets mean that across the board, fewer conversations were being had about disability insurance and fewer sales. In terms of the go-forward path, a more positive benefits-oriented approach to disability and conversation is what consumers most responded to. So getting away from the scare tactics and the kind of negative consequences to really talking about the positive benefits that can be achieved with an income protection plan. And advisors and wholesalers need help kind of overcoming those initial objections that, I'm already covered through group, or I don't need any more insurance. The tools to kind of combat those obstacles that often come up in the conversation and help them to get to the next level. So the findings, we've really organized them into these 3 buckets. So depending on where you are as a seller or non-seller of DI, you can sort of thumb through these findings to find what you are based on your situation. So those 3 sections are begin the conversation, shift the conversation, and sustain the conversation. And you'll see those 3 sort of pillars echoed across all of the marketing content that we've made available for regarding this research. So begin the conversation really focuses on identifying the right clients. Shifting the conversation is how to emphasize the right details in client-friendly language. And sustaining the conversation is once you've gotten the first 2, you can sort of neutralize some of those barriers to sales that often come up in client objections. Beginning the conversation, as I've said, it's to help you get started selling in disability insurance. Clients understand the importance of having an income. It's probably what makes most of their financial goals possible. So the idea of protecting their income is automatically attractive. However, they don't necessarily make the connection of disability insurance as a means to protecting their income. Most participants weren't sure what disability insurance even was. Some thought it was like some form of health care. So the more that you can define disability insurance as income protection in your client conversations, the more you can help your clients to understand its value. Defined as income protection, disability insurance can be positioned as a policy that really protects everything else and helps your clients keep their larger financial goals on track until they return to work. And another thing that came up repeatedly among participants is the role that they expect their advisor to play as a financial professional, many of your clients are actually looking to you to make recommendations on products that they may not have considered before. That means many of your clients are likely open to discussing DI, but the key is really using the right language to have specific and really targeted conversations with the right clients. So the right language and the right client are really what's important to identify. And to help you identify those right clients, we have created this ideal client profile that you see here. It's also available on our microsite, which I'll share a link with you at the end, and as well as it's reflected in a number of our other marketing materials. And it's really just meant to give you a place to start in identifying clients who are most likely to be open to discussing disability insurance. It's the same criteria that we used in screening participants for this research. And you can use this to identify new clients or evaluate existing clients within your book of business. But as I said, don't worry about memorizing it. It's available on our microsite, and I will share the link to that at the end. But once you've sort of begun the conversation with those clients, this section is really focused on 3 slight changes in your sales language that can help you to get a more positive, benefits-oriented sales conversation that I mentioned in the last section. The research showed that the term disability itself can be confusing and often creates an immediate barrier in the conversation. Clients hear the word disability and they automatically think it's not going to happen to me. So, you know, people in the sort of conversations that we had during these focus groups, people were channeling images of Christopher Reeves and, you know, someone in a wheelchair, and not necessarily, you know, someone sick or that got hurt on the job. They automatically think it's something tragic that's not going to happen to me. So shifting away from protection against a disability to instead protection for your income gives you the opportunity to highlight to your clients the benefits of protecting their income in case of the unexpected, as opposed to the financial risks associated with experiencing a disability. The quote you see there from a St. Louis participant really kind of sums up this point. I like the idea of income insurance. I depend on my income, and that's what I'm looking to protect. The second shift speaks to when and how disability is brought up in the sales conversation. As I mentioned, sellers don't want to jeopardize their life insurance or other product sales, so they typically wait until afterwards to bring up DI, and it's done they're sort of pitching disability insurance on its own. And without that additional context, it's easy for clients to see DI as an afterthought and dismiss it as unnecessary because they already have group coverage from their employer and they think they're covered. Connecting DI to a broader insurance conversation allows you to leverage that inherent value the client already perceives in life insurance and group coverage, and elevate DI to a level of being sort of another pillar in a sound insurance plan, as opposed to an afterthought. And it can help to balance the income protection plan for those with life insurance alone, or it can be supplemental to group coverage for those who need to cover a little bit more. That last shift, we as marketers have probably been among the most guilty of using scare tactics and unrealistic promises as a means to discussing the benefits of DI. Much of our marketing language has involved asking clients to imagine scenarios where they can't pay their mortgage or have to exhaust their children's college fund to pay monthly expenses after a disability strikes. And clients really interpret those as sales pitches. You know, they're used to sort of those canned product pitches that I mentioned earlier, and they tune them out almost immediately. So the shift here is to move towards this idea of stability. A participant said, I don't need scare tactics or emotional messaging to bring me back to what disability insurance is. The reality is your lifestyle is going to change, and you want to know that you're going to be able to keep it stable. And that idea of stability, it can and will mean different things to different clients. So Some may just want to cover their monthly mortgage expense. Others may need more, but the idea of stability is something that everyone can relate to, and likely something everyone will desire in the context of a disability. And that stability gives the seller the opportunity to kind of customize the solution to meet that client's specific needs. So this last section focuses on sustaining the DI conversation with clients and really highlighting removing those barriers sellers may unknowingly introduce into the sales conversation. Again, moving away from consequences of not having disability and those scare tactics that I mentioned on the last slide, to instead focusing on the realistic benefits of having DI and being financially prepared for the unexpected with disability insurance. So these are subtle shifts, but I think making them can prove pretty impactful in your client conversations. Often clients bring up group coverage they have through an employer as an objection to getting individual disability. And the natural tendency as a seller is to kind of highlight all the ways in which group coverage kind of falls short in response to that objection, when actually this tested very negatively among respondents. Group is a good, cost-effective first step, and clients don't want to be made to feel like they've done the wrong thing by going with it. So instead of an objection, you as the seller have the opportunity to kind of turn this into a positive and acknowledge group as a good first step and help them understand the details of their group coverage. You know, how is income defined? Who's the carrier? What is the definition of a total disability? How long do your benefits last? You know, questions like that can help you to help the client understand their coverage and the pitfalls of it and the shortcomings of it. They'll automatically identify on their own just by understanding more about the coverage, the details of the coverage that they have. And doing this kind of helps build trust and credibility with the client and allows you to introduce individual as a means to cover any gaps that their group might have left, their group coverage might have left. Statistics, they have their place in the conversation, but relying just on raw statistics alone didn't really resonate well with clients. One we like to use in marketing is cover up to 65 or 85% of your income with disability insurance. And in that scenario, all the client heard was they weren't 100% protected. And if they can't protect 100%, you know, why even bother? So instead, highlighting DI as a customizable product allows you to help the client design a plan that fits their need for coverage and their budget. Comparisons to auto and home are a pretty common obstacle sellers create for themselves, because in the best case scenario, clients will have their disability coverage and never use it, just like is the case with auto and home insurance. You have it, but you may never use it. Hopefully you never use it. But most clients see auto and property insurance almost as commodities. They're very price driven and services that they can get basically anywhere. Positioning DI as a complement to life insurance to create that balanced income protection plan, as I mentioned on the last slide, is a better approach. And again, it helps elevate the need for disability insurance right up there with life insurance, which most people already acknowledge as something they need to protect their incomes, their loved ones rather. In the case of their death, disability can help you protect it in the case you're still here, which is more likely and can't work. This last point, the most successful DI sellers are probably already doing. Disability is not a one-size-fits-all product, so a single sales strategy is likely not going to work for all clients. So instead, developing targeted strategies and having conversations tailored to that client's specific needs will show your clients that you understand their reality and help you get to the next level of the sales conversation. This slide gives you an example of some of the words to shift away from and some alternative language to use instead. There's a much broader list of these sort of landmines to avoid, and the alternative language available on our Words at Work microsite. As I mentioned, I'll share a link to it at the end. And also out there is a little fun game you can use to test your knowledge of what words work and which words to lose and which words to use. So now that you are kind of familiar with the research and the findings, what do you do with it, right? The intent of the research in this webinar are really to help you build a new client conversation. And that conversation focuses on putting the client in control by affirming their smart decisions to protect their income, leading them through a positive conversation focused on the benefits of DI, and ultimately empowering them to make their own decision. And it's probably slightly different than how we've approached the sales conversation in the past, but all of this is rooted in research and what clients responded to when we put it in front of them. And this approach is what tested by far the best. So this last slide really talks about those additional resources that are available out there if you want more information on the Words at Work. This link will take you to the Words at Work microsite, and I will make sure I share this with Tracy so that she can send it out more broadly. There are some hard copy materials there, the playbook and a few flyers that you can download to your desktop if you so choose. We have the Words at Work video series that's available on the microsite, as well as some of our Words at Work microsite, as well as a couple other places. And that really gives like a video presentation of the shifts and the recommendations that I went through a couple slides back. And there's lastly some wholesaler talking points that can kind of help you as a wholesaler or producer talk to disability insurance and this Words at Work research at a really high level. So I know I went through that really fast, so if there are questions or something you'd like me to delve into a little bit more, please use the chat function and I'll respond.
Keisha, do you have the URL for the microsite?
I do. It's not like a vanity, wordsatwork.com kind of thing. It's basically a bunch of random characters.
Oh, I
so
see.
I will send you a link because there's no way I would say it right or that you would write it down the correct way. So I will email you a link that you can forward more broadly.
Okay, so if people, because I know I'm already getting questions for that, if you are interested in the URL for the DI Words at Work microsite, you can email me, Tracy, Tracey, at plusgroupus.com, and I can get that out to you. I wish it was written on the presentation because they'll get this in the email to them, but it isn't anywhere, right? So we'll just have to send me the link as soon as possible, and I can send it out to those that want it. So.
Yeah, definitely. As soon as we get off, I'll send you the link.
Okay, that'd be great. Again, if there's any other questions, go ahead and type them in, and we will address them. I think that's going to be the big thing, the microsite. Again, if anyone has any other questions. Well, if you do have any questions after this, you can certainly reach out to your local Plus Group office or me, Tracy at plusgroupus.com, and we'll get you the answers you need. Keisha, thank you for your time, and MetLife for your time today.
Oh, of course. You're welcome.
Again, thank you everybody for attending, and again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact your local Plus Group office. My email again, and again, I've had dental surgery, so it's hard to hear. It's Tracy, Tracey, at plusgroupus.com. So it's Tracey at plusgroupus.com. Hopefully everyone got that. If not, if you have a local Plus Group office, you can contact them and they'll get it for you, okay? All right, again, everyone, thank you for your time today. Keisha, thank you. And
You're welcome. Thanks for
everyone,
having me.
have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.